Warning, this video contains team selection and captain choices which some viewers may find offensive.
Hey guys, and welcome back to FPL TV. Before looking to the midweek game week 33, let's first see how my side performed in the blank game week 32 over the weekend. 32 was a game week in which I was up against around 450,000 active free hit chips, so for that reason it was always going to be a tricky one. In the Friday night kickoff, however, things did start off fairly well, with both Arsenal mids delivering in that thrilling 3-3 draw. Nothing gained from these players really, but it was enough to keep up with those on the free hit to kick things off, particularly with the popular differential free hit choice of Gabriel Jesus blanking despite racking up plenty of chances. It's Gabriel in defence who's been the biggest letdown since buying him in game week 22, though so very few returns. And the one goal from a set piece that I'd been hoping for from him ended up coming the one game week I benched him away to Fulham. Frustrating. Considering the fact I was up against all those free hit chips last week, what I needed from my 10 men was some differential points from somewhere, and that's absolutely what I got from Andreas against Leeds with a goal and all 3 bonus points to boot. His 10 points was the most notable return of my game week, no doubt, made all the better considering I brought him in last week with this game week in mind, and he certainly stepped up to the plate. The best moment of my game week certainly. Elsewhere, not too much to report, with both Trippier and Tyrone Mings conceding in their respective games. However, at least Ollie Watkins blanked for Aston Villa in what seemed like the first time in 23 game weeks. A big relief there considering I chose not to bring him in the end. With my 2 free transfers last week, I took the transfer route that I believed had the bigger upside, and brought in Alexander-Arnold and Dominic Solanke as discussed in my last video, as opposed to the alternative Alisson and Watkins. Not exactly the greatest start, with the pair producing 7 points between them, Liverpool conceding 2 goals at home to Forest and Solanke blanking against West Ham. On the positive though, it was still 3 points more than the Watkins and Alisson combo produced, so for now the right decision at least. Trent also had another assist cleared off the line in his game, while Solanke hit the post in his, so it was close to being a lot better. Fair play to West Ham for that 4-0 win over the weekend too. Honestly, on current form, I actually really fancied the Cherries in that one. In that Liverpool fixture, my captain Mo Salah did get on the score sheet, assisted by Alexander-Arnold, so the perfect goal there to give the game week a little boost. Though sadly, as was always going to be a very high possibility, Darwin was benched and came on for the 1-pointer. That was definitely disappointing, especially considering Jota went on to bag 2 goals in that game. I had hinted at a potential switch there in my last video, I just didn't fancy it enough for a -4. A shame. So for blank game week 32, a game week without a goalkeeper and therefore 10 men, my team returned a respectable 57. And seeing as though I didn't have the free hit available, that's not bad at all. Sadly, it wasn't enough for a green arrow, falling a small 13,000 places in the rankings. However, with so many managers having their free hit in play, I'd say holding my rank here isn't a bad result. In fairness, I was close to a green arrow last week and was sitting on one before the final games on Sunday, but goals from both Isaac and Harry Kane then turned that green to a small red. Let's move on to game week 33 now, and with my blanking players now returning, let's see how the squad currently lines up as well as talking about my transfer moves. So with such a quick turnaround and very little time to think this game week, for a change I've already locked in my free transfer for game week 33. With Marcus Rashford returning from injury and returning to the starting lineup in the FA Cup over the weekend, I've made the decision to bring him back in this week, ahead of United's double game week in 34. Martin Odegaard, the player to regretfully make way, with Arsenal having a very tough trip to the Etihad this week, as well as then facing Chelsea, Newcastle and Brighton in the games to follow. A tough run on paper there for the Gunners, with notably no double game week on the way. Am I overly convinced that Rashford will do well this week away to Spurs? Well, not particularly, especially if Bruno Fernandes and his creativity were to miss the game through injury. But considering I was very likely going to bench Odegaard this week away to Man City, and considering I was almost certainly going to make this free transfer in game week 34 next week anyway, I've simply chosen to bring this transfer forward 1 game week early. The initial plan was to wait a week to be honest, but after Newcastle just hit Spurs for 6 over the weekend, I figured why wait? I'm happier owning Rashford over Odegaard this week I think, and certainly want him for his double in 34, so decided there's no real sense in waiting. So with that free transfer now locked in, let's see how my side currently looks for game week 33. On paper, not particularly happy with the team this week, but I guess that is down mostly to the fact that 9 of my current starting 11 are away from home. Darwin still with no guarantees on starting, Kepa in goal who I do expect will concede against Brentford, Trent away to West Ham who just scored 4. There's also Saka away to Man City too, so although I've got lots of solid options in my team, let's just say I'm keeping my expectations low. It's also another game week where I'm obviously very concerned not to own Ollie Watkins, who's certainly one of my biggest worries at home to Fulham. I'm really going to need Big Dom Solanke to step up here. With all that said, I'm not sure there's too much about my team that I would change for this week. Only because for the following game week 34, with one eye on the big double game week, I will be fairly set up for the double, and hopefully then I can raise my expectations a bit for that one. This week, game week 33 feels a bit like the calm before the storm, to be honest. But if I can squeeze just a small green arrow out of it, I'd be absolutely delighted. Are there any obvious -4 hits I could take to make this team better for this game week 33? That I'm not so sure of. Perhaps Darwin to Jota, but again, with games coming thick and fast for Liverpool, there's no guarantee that Darwin doesn't start this fixture, or potentially the double in 34. After all, it's a game every 3 days and Jota has only recently come back to fitness. Darwin to Isaac another one, but seeing as though Liverpool have the double in 34 whilst Newcastle don't, I think I'm going to hold fire on that one for now. Isaac for Newcastle's double in 36 is the plan. So, although anything can happen before the all-important game week deadline, the one free transfer of Odegaard to Rashford is probably going to be all she wrote for this week. For the captaincy in game week 33, it's likely this week I'm going back to the boring basics and captaining Erling Haaland. Not the best fixture on paper, arguably, a crunch fixture and potentially a title-deciding one against league leaders Arsenal. But seeing as though the pressure seems to be really mounting on the Gunners in recent games, and with them looking less than convincing at the back without Saliba in the team, it's enough to make captaining Haaland almost as simple as it usually is. The Gunners have conceded 7 goals in just their last 3, and if Granit Xhaka were to miss out through injury too, well, that'd be a big miss. To be fair, with Haaland being the only outfield player in my 11 to be at home this week, and with no other outstanding alternatives in the team, that too makes it a bit more straightforward. I also think the captaincy call this week would be a lot more difficult if I did hypothetically own Ollie Watkins, who I believe will be a popular shout this week. If I were to try and think differential in 33, then Salah and Matoma certainly considerations here, Matoma in particular against Forest, who I believe could be a very nice differential. However, it's the fact that Matoma is just coming off the back of 120 minutes played on Sunday in the FA Cup that has me a bit concerned for reduced minutes there. No doubt the fixture is very good on paper, but with Haaland only playing 65 minutes and having that extra day of rest, that's enough for me, I think, to bottle any differential captaincy punt this week. On the bench in game week 33, I do have one big benching headache, and that's where to fit in Tyrone Mings at home to Fulham. I've often learned the hard way when it comes to benching Mings in recent game weeks, who's been absolutely superb. I'm just not sure where to fit him in this week really. I'd say his clean sheet is probably more likely at home to Fulham than the likes of Trent's away to West Ham or Estupiñán's away to Forest. But the other two just offer a lot more going forward, so simply chasing the upside here. There's also an argument to play Mings over the potentially bench Darwin Núñez too, but again, just chasing that upside really. So that's everything discussed regarding my team for game week 33. Odegaard to Rashford, the one confirmed free transfer, and it's unlikely I'll be taking a -4 for moves elsewhere. Darwin to Jota or Isaac, a slight consideration, but I doubt I'll go through with it. The plan with Darwin and me now having held him this long is most likely to hold him for the double in game week 34, cross my fingers that he gets decent minutes there, and then reassess in 35. As for Tyrone Mings on my bench, well, as mentioned, if I were to bring him into my 11 this week, then it's either Darwin Núñez or Estupiñán who'd make way. A tough call there, and one which I will continue weighing up until the deadline. Good luck to you all for the upcoming game week, FPL responsibly, and I'll catch you all very soon.